Some American towns don't collapse overnight. There's no headline, no disaster, no sudden warning. People just leave. One family moves away for a better job, another leaves when the factory closes, a few more pack up when the school shuts down. And before anyone really notices, the grocery store goes dark, the main street grows quiet, and the town starts to feel a little emptier every year. It doesn't show up on the news. There's no moment you can point to and say, that's when it happened. It just happens, slowly, quietly, and by the time most people realize it, it's already been going on for decades. Across the United States, there are places where this is happening right now. Not abandoned, not dangerous, just slowly losing the people who once called them home. Some were industrial giants, some were river towns, some were railroad hubs. All of them are smaller now than they used to be. Here are 10 U.S. towns people are quietly leaving. Number 10, Gary, Indiana. There's a church in Gary, Indiana that still stands in the middle of an empty field. City Methodist Church, built in 1926. Big stone arches, tall windows, a tower that reaches above the vacant lots surrounding it. It looks like it belongs in a city. But the city around it is mostly gone. Gary was built for steel. In the early 20th century, U.S. Steel Corporation laid the entire city out from scratch. Streets, homes, factories, everything. Workers poured in from across the country. At its peak, over 170,000 people lived here. The mills ran around the clock. Then the steel industry collapsed. It didn't happen all at once. It was plant closures, layoffs, families packing up, businesses shutting down, one block at a time, 1 year at a time. Today, Gary's population is below 70,000, less than half of what it once was. Some neighborhoods are almost entirely vacant. Streets that used to have houses now have just concrete foundations and overgrown grass. That church is still standing, though. No roof now, just walls and arches and open sky. In a lot of ways, it's the most honest symbol Gary has, a structure built for a crowd that no longer comes. Number 9, Youngstown, Ohio. September 19th, 1977. That's the date people in Youngstown still remember. They call it Black Monday. That morning, the Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company announced it was closing its Campbell Works facility. Nearly 5,000 workers lost their jobs in a single day. Not through a slow decline, not through years of warning, just one announcement. But Black Monday wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of the end. More closures followed, more layoffs, more families deciding there was nothing left to stay for. Youngstown had built its entire identity around the steel mills along the Mahoning River. When those mills died, the city didn't know what to be. The population, which had peaked above 170,000, dropped below 60,000. Entire neighborhoods were eventually demolished, not because they burned down, but because so few people remained that it was cheaper to tear the buildings down than maintain empty streets. The social impact has been just as visible. In recent years, the area has faced overdose death rates nearly double the national average, significantly higher suicide levels, and poverty rates far above what most Americans experience. For many residents, these numbers weren't just statistics. They were signs that the city was still struggling to recover. Youngstown tried to reimagine itself. And there are real signs of effort today, a small but growing downtown, university presence, community projects. But Black Monday left a wound that never fully closed. And for a lot of families, the math was simple. The jobs were gone, so they left too. Number 8, Rockford, Illinois. If you drive through Rockford, Illinois today, it doesn't look like a city in trouble. There are busy intersections, chain restaurants, a hospital district that employs thousands, a minor league baseball stadium, traffic during rush hour. It looks, at first glance, like a normal Midwestern city doing fine. But look a little longer. The old factory buildings along the Rock River, most of them are empty or converted into something else. The neighborhoods on the west side have vacancy rates that don't match the activity near the highway. And if you talk to anyone who grew up here in the 70s or 80s, they'll tell you the city feels different now. Rockford used to be called the screw capital of the world. Not a glamorous nickname, but an honest one. It was a manufacturing powerhouse. Tools, hardware, furniture, aerospace components, tens of thousands of factory jobs. A real middle class. Automation and outsourcing took most of that away. The population hasn't collapsed the way Gary or Youngstown did, but it hasn't grown either. And every year, more young people finish school and leave for Chicago, for Nashville, for anywhere with more momentum. Rockford is still functioning, it just hasn't figured out what comes next. Number 7, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Here's a number, 40. That's the percentage of children in Pine Bluff living below the poverty line. And here's a title no city wants, America's fastest shrinking city. That's what Pine Bluff is called right now. Pine Bluff was once one of the more prosperous cities in the South. Paper mills, chemical plants, a strong agricultural economy, and a rail hub that connected it to larger markets. At its peak, over 57,000 people called it home. But the factories closed, the mills downsized, the jobs that kept families stable started disappearing one by one. When jobs leave, a city like Pine Bluff, a specific kind of chain reaction starts. Businesses close because there aren't enough customers. Schools lose funding because the tax base shrinks. Young people who might have stayed start doing the math and realize there isn't much to stay for. The population today is below 40,000, down from nearly 60,000 at its peak, and it's still falling. Parts of downtown Pine Bluff look frozen in time, storefronts that haven't been occupied in years, buildings waiting for a revival that hasn't arrived yet. There are people working to change that. Real efforts, real investment. But for thousands of families, the decision has already been made. They needed opportunity, they went somewhere else to find it. Number 6, Bessemer, Alabama. The city was named after a man who never set foot in Alabama. Henry Bessemer was a British engineer who invented a process for mass-producing steel. He never came to America. But in 1887, when a group of investors found rich deposits of iron ore and coal in the hills of Jefferson County, they named their new city after him. It felt like destiny. And for a while, it was. Bessemer grew fast. Steel plants, iron foundries, related industries, the city became one of the most important manufacturing centers in the South. The population climbed, the economy was stable. People built lives here expecting them to last. Then, the steel industry began its long decline. Furnaces went cold, plants shut down, the workforce that had defined the city for generations found itself without work. Bessemer didn't collapse dramatically, it shrank quietly. The population dropped from over 33,000 at its peak to under 25,000 today. Neighborhoods that were once working class and stable began to struggle. Parts of downtown that used to be busy grew still. Henry Bessemer's process revolutionized the steel industry, but the city built in his honor couldn't survive the industry's end. What's left is a community that still has pride, just fewer people to share it. Number 5, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. On May 31, 1889, a dam broke above Johnstown, Pennsylvania. 20 million tons of water came down the valley in less than an hour. More than 2,200 people died. It remains one of the deadliest disasters in American history. But Johnstown survived, the city rebuilt, the steel industry came back stronger, and for decades after the flood, Johnstown thrived, mills running, population growing, a city that had proven it could endure anything. What it couldn't endure was something slower. No wall of water this time, just a steady trickle. Plant closures, one by one, jobs disappearing, quietly, year after year, families deciding the city couldn't offer what it used to. By the 1980s, Johnstown's steel industry was essentially gone. The population, which had once exceeded 67,000, fell below 20,000. It's still falling today. The 1889 flood lasted minutes, the economic collapse lasted decades. And in some ways, the second disaster was harder, because there was no single moment to point to, no clear enemy to fight, just the slow, grinding reality of an economy that had moved on and left Johnstown behind. The city rebuilt once before. Whether it can do it again is a question Johnstown is still trying to answer. Number 4, CLARKSBURG, West Virginia. Every year, a graduating class leaves CLARKSBURG. It's not dramatic. There's no announcement. They just finish school, high school, or the community college, or one of the nearby universities, and then they go. To Pittsburgh, to Columbus, to Charlotte, to anywhere with more jobs in the field they studied. And the ones who stay, a lot of them are staying because of family, because of roots, not because Clarksburg gave them a reason to choose it. This is the quiet version of population decline. Not a factory closing, not a disaster, just a generation making individual decisions one by one that add up to a city slowly getting smaller. Clarksburg once had a real economic identity. Coal, glass manufacturing, regional commerce. It was a hub. It mattered. As those industries faded, the city lost the thing that made young people want to stay. Today, the population sits around 14,000, down from a peak of nearly 30,000. The downtown still has some life. There are people who love this city and are working to revive it. But until there are jobs that give young people a reason to come back, not just to visit family, but to build a life, the graduating classes will keep quietly leaving. Number 3, Wheeling, West Virginia. At one point, Wheeling was the capital of West Virginia. This was during the Civil War. Virginia had seceded, the western counties refused to go with it, and Wheeling became the seat of the new state's government, a city that mattered. A city at the center of things. It didn't stay the capital for long, but the city itself kept growing. Steel, glass, manufacturing. Its location on the Ohio River made it a natural hub for trade and transportation. By the early 1900s, Wheeling was one of the more prosperous cities in the entire region. Then came the same story, the Rust Belt decline, the factory closures, the jobs moving elsewhere. From a peak population of around 61,000, Wheeling has dropped to roughly 27,000 today. More than half its residents gone over the course of a century. What's interesting about Wheeling is what's still there. Beautiful 19th century architecture, a walkable downtown, a suspension bridge that's over 175 years old and still in use. The bones of a great city. But bones are what they are. The people who once filled those streets, worked those factories, crossed that bridge every morning, most of them, or their children or their grandchildren, have long since moved on. Wheeling was a capital once. Now it's just trying to hold on. Number 2, Galesburg, Illinois. There's a train that still runs through Galesburg every day. You can hear it at night, the horn, the rumble, the sound of something moving through a town that used to move with it. Galesburg was a railroad town. The Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway made it a major hub, and for generations, working on the railroad or in the factories nearby was a stable, respectable career. The kind of job you could raise a family on. The trains still come through, but they don't stop the same way they used to. Automation reduced the workforce. The Maytag factory, which had employed thousands of locals, closed in 2004 and moved to Mexico, a closure that became a symbol of a much larger national story about what happens when manufacturing leaves. Galesburg's population has dropped from a peak of around 40,000 to roughly 29,000 today. The town still has its colleges, its historic districts, its loyal long-term residents. It still has a main street with some life in it, but it also has a graduating class that keeps getting smaller. And every night, when the train passes through, there's something almost symbolic about it, the sound of movement, of things going somewhere, passing through a town that used to be the destination. Number 1, CAIRO, Illinois. CAIRO sits at the very bottom of Illinois, where the Mississippi River and the Ohio River come together. Look at a map and you'll see it immediately, the sharp point of land where two of America's greatest rivers meet. It looks important, it looks like it should matter, and once it did. In the mid-1800s, CAIRO was a significant river port. Goods moved through it, people moved through it, there were hotels, banks, a customs house. At its peak, over 15,000 people lived here, and the future looked like it would keep growing. But the railroads changed the logic of transportation. The rivers stopped being the only way to move things, and CAIRO, which had been defined entirely by its geography, found that geography was no longer enough. Over the following century, the population collapsed in a way that's almost hard to comprehend. Today, fewer than 2,000 people remain. Large sections of downtown are abandoned. Historic buildings that once housed businesses stand empty, slowly deteriorating. Some blocks have more vacant lots than standing structures. In CAIRO, the silence didn't arrive all at once. It came slowly, year after year, as people packed up, moved on, and never came back. Two of America's greatest rivers still meet here every day. They don't seem to notice that almost everyone else has left.